From the very end of Ruth, the service theme this morning is 3 redeemers. How many can you spot in this reading? Thanks, Shirley.
You'll follow the reading this morning on page 270 in the Bibles in the pews. It's the end of the book of Ruth, and I'm going to read from verse 13. That's page 270, Ruth chapter 4, starting at verse 13. Naomi gains a son. So Boaz took Ruth, and she became his wife. When he made love to her, the Lord enabled her to conceive, and she gave birth to a son. The women said to Naomi, "Praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without a guardian redeemer. May he become famous throughout Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. For your daughter-in-law, who loves you and is better to you than 7 sons, has given him birth." Then Naomi took the child in her arms and cared for him. The women living there said, "Naomi has a son," and they named him Obed. He was the father of Jesse, the father of David. The genealogy of David. This, then, is the family line of Perez. Perez was the father of Hezron. Hezron, the father of Ram. Ram, the father of Aminadab. Aminadab, the father of Nahshon. Nahshon, the father of Salmon. Salmon, the father of Boaz. Boaz, the father of Obed. Obed, the father of Jesse. And Jesse, the father of David. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Thank you, Shirley, very much. Reggie's joined me for this morning. Do keep that Bible passage open, by the way, everybody. We're going to look at the end of Ruth this morning and our service theme, the Redeemer hat trick. Reggie, what are you doing? You're wearing a hat. I'm going to have to take it off in order to speak to you. Okay, sure. Very good. You've got a hat. Why have you got a hat? Because of the hat trick. I'm going to do a hat trick. That's the point of the service. No, it's not the point. That's not what a hat trick is. It's not a magic trick done with hats. What a surprise and a shame, because I've got several. Look at these. Okay. Right. Yeah. Okay. We've got one with a skull and crossbones on there, and got another one. Okay. Oh, there we go, and a crown. And at least you've got 3 of them there, Reggie. That's pretty good, because that's what a hat trick is. What do you mean? Well, a hat trick is 3 of something. Often in sport, it might be in cricket that a bowler takes 3 wickets in a row. That's a hat trick. In archery, it might be 3 bullseyes from the archer. I don't know whether that's a thing, but that would be a hat trick, 3 in a row. I see. It's 3, that's right. Or in football, it's 3 goals scored in a match by one particular player. And right on cue, as if we'd organised it, there were 3 hat tricks in the Premier League yesterday. Wouldn't you know that? Amazing. Almost like you'd planned it. Yeah, that's right. Well, that's what a hat trick is. And there were 3 of them yesterday. Yes, so one of them, for Manchester City striker, only happened in the final minutes of the match. He completed his hat trick. And in the final verses of Ruth, we get to see the Redeemer hat trick this morning. Okay. Hold on a moment. You mentioned the word redeemer. Yeah, that's right. That's what we're looking at. What is a redeemer? Well, there are actually 3 redeemers that we're going to look at this morning. A redeemer is somebody who pays something in order to get something. I know what you mean. I have been redeeming things. I've been collecting those tops off the cans of my dog food for years, and I'm going to redeem them and get something back. That sounds good. You'd think, wouldn't you? Oh, okay, so it's not that good. I collected 10,000 tops of cans, sent them all in, and I was given a sample of the new range of cat food. Dear. So you paid a lot, all of those can tops, to get something back that didn't really benefit you at all. That's a bit like Boaz, though, in our reading. So Boaz gave up a lot, he paid a lot to get some land for Naomi. And what he got back, well, it was going to put him at a disadvantage, but it would be a great blessing to Naomi and to Ruth. Better tell us more. Yeah, well, I'm going to allow you to go off and give that free sample of cat food to Tiddles the cat. She would love that, wouldn't she? Okay, yeah, that'd be really good. So we'll let you do that, and we'll have a look at Ruth just to remind ourselves of where we've got to in the book of Ruth. You'll remember that the book of Ruth is all about Naomi, actually, more than Ruth. It's all about Naomi's journey. She was at rock bottom. Her husband died and her sons died. And she was left in the land of Moab, away from Israel. But her daughter-in-law, Ruth, stayed with her. And together, Ruth and Naomi went back to Israel. And things started looking up for Naomi and for Ruth. Ruth went to work in a field that just happened to belong to this man called Boaz. He was a relative of Naomi, and he was really kind to Ruth. So Naomi wondered if he might give Ruth a home. But Ruth wanted more than that. She wanted to marry Boaz because she knew that that would really help her mother-in-law in due course. Naomi had no family to fall back on in old age, and no one to buy back the family land which belonged to her husband who died. So her life prospects looked pretty grim. But Ruth heads off in the dead of night and speaks to Boaz, who is surprised but delighted to go with the plan. He's prepared to buy Naomi's land and to marry Ruth. In other words, to do all of his duties as a redeemer and then some extra as well, in order to care for these two women. So Boaz is a brilliant redeemer. He's prepared to give up his money and himself in order to help Naomi and Ruth. He buys the land, he marries Ruth there in the picture, and they have a baby son to carry on Naomi's family name. That's what we find in the verses right at the end of the book that Shirley read for us. Because of Boaz and what he did, Naomi had a future, a place to stay on land that still belonged to her late husband, and food that would not just last for the harvest time, but all year round. Now, in the pews, and given to you as you came in this morning, you'll find a green bookmark like this. I hope you've got one of those. If not, wave a hand and size person to make sure that you've got one. Okay, I think you've all got one. So there we go. I hope you've got one of those to hand. And you'll need a pencil as well. There are some at the end of your pews, or a pen if you've got one of those handy, but there are some pencils there. Ask if you haven't got a pencil to person next to you to pass one down. And you'll see that there are 3 spaces for our Redeemer hat-trick today, for our 3 Redeemers. Okay. Well, we've met the first one. He's there in the picture, and it's Boaz. Boaz is the first Redeemer. So what I want you to do is to open up the first little window on the bookmark, which you're going to take away at the end. And if you open it up and fold it back, there's Boaz, okay? And you can write Boaz next to the picture of him. So if you write that in pencil just next to the picture of Boaz on the other side of the window so that you can see his name next to his picture. Boaz is the first Redeemer that we've got there, that we're finding this morning at the end of the book of Ruth. That's not a surprise. We knew that Boaz was a redeemer. He gave Naomi hope. So you can fill in hope on the letters as well. That's what he did. He gave Naomi hope for the future. She was hopeless in her thinking about the future before, but then he redeemed her. But remember, there's a Redeemer hat trick in the service today. There's another Redeemer, at least, hiding in the verses that Shirley read to us. So keep them open in front of you. Let's see, shall we? After Ruth gives birth to the baby that Ruth and Boaz have, look at what the women say to Naomi, because it's a bit of a surprise. They say, "Praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without a guardian redeemer. May he become famous throughout Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age, for your daughter-in-law who loves you and who is better to you than 7 sons has given him birth." Wow, those last few words, those are the surprise. We're expecting the women to say, "For your daughter-in-law who loves you has married him," because we think they're talking about Boaz, but no, they're talking about the baby. The baby is the Redeemer that the women are talking about here. He is Redeemer number 2 this morning, everybody. And as we read on, we find out his name. The name of this baby, born to Boaz and Ruth, is Obed. So open up the second window on your bookmark now, and you'll see baby Obed. There he is. And you can write Obed next to his face. So you've got Obed next to the picture of the little baby. Obed is Redeemer number 2 this morning. And what did Obed give to Naomi? He gave Naomi life. Do you see that in verse 15? This baby boy would grow up to carry on the family name and also to help his grandma in her old age. He is a redeemer, giving up himself to help Naomi. And we can't go past these verses without noticing another surprise. So one surprise is that baby Obed is a redeemer, giving Naomi life. But the other surprise is that although Ruth isn't described as a redeemer, she sets a brilliant example of being a redeemer to her son. She was willing to stick with her mother-in-law when things got really tough. She could have stayed in Moab where it was safer, but she clung to Naomi, and she clung to Naomi's God, knowing that he was a God of wonderful grace and mercy. And that's why Ruth is worth more than 7 Obeds all rolled into one. That's a wonderful thing to say. But keep looking at the Bible passage, if you've got it open. In verse 16, Naomi does this. She takes baby Obed into her arms, and look, verse 17, the women living there said, "Naomi has a son." And they're not joking. What they're saying is, Naomi didn't have any chance of getting on in life before, but now she has a son in the family. She is sorted. So Obed, baby Obed, is in some sense Naomi's son as well. Now, Naomi is sorted. Who has done all of this sorting out? It's God, isn't it? All the way through the book of Ruth. When things started looking up for Naomi, that was God sorting it out. When Ruth ended up in Boaz's field, that wasn't an accident. It was God sorting it out. When Boaz agreed to marry Ruth and be the special redeemer for Naomi, that was God's kindness to Ruth and to Naomi. See, the book of Ruth doesn't teach us that God will sort out everything for us in this life. What it does, it teaches us that God is in charge of all of history, and we can be sure that he is the same God, full of grace and mercy now as he ever was. He is faithful and we can trust him. And he shows his grace and mercy in different ways, but especially through us, his people. That's what we see throughout this book. Ruth is kind to Naomi. That's God using Ruth to show his kindness. Boaz is kind to Ruth. That's God using Boaz to show his kindness. And baby Obed is a great blessing to Naomi, to Ruth, especially to Naomi, who lost 2 sons but gains a new son at the end. God is using Obed to bless the 2 women. So, if you're a Christian here today, someone who trusts the Lord Jesus, you're a member of this church, you're joined to Jesus by faith, and you're also related to your brothers and sisters here at Emmanuel. And you get the chance to be God's gift to them by showing them the kindness that comes from knowing Jesus Christ and being part of God's family. Now, I said there'd be 3 redeemers. We've only seen 2 so far, but you'll have to wait for the 3rd one because we're going to sing another song right now. Thank you. Now, back to Ruth. And I know what you're thinking. I said there would be a hat trick of redeemers. Where is the 3rd one? We're nearly at the end of the book of Ruth. We've only seen 2, Boaz and baby Obed. So if God scored a 3rd goal, where is the 3rd redeemer? I wonder. Let's see this video.
Well, I'm here now with Harry. Well played, Harry. Brilliant work in that match. Talk us through the goals. You can see them just here in front of you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, for the first one, Barry was on the wing. He passed to Larry, who played me through and took a swing at it. And some days those go in, and today was one of those days because it hit the back of the net. And yeah, I'm over the moon.
Brilliant stuff. And talk us through the second one.
Yeah, well, Barry played a brilliant cross to Gary, and Gary flicked it on, and it went off my head into the goal. I don't score many like that, but yeah, it's a funny old game, and it was nice to see it go in 2-0, and yeah, it set me up nicely for the hat trick.
Wait, the hat trick? I thought there were only 2, Harry. I think we might have missed it.
Oh yeah, that's because you're interviewing me after just 90 minutes. We haven't had extra time yet. 7 minutes of added time at the end of the match, and I score, yeah.
Well, you mean the final goal's still to happen?
Yeah, basically it's one of your classic time travel scenarios. I'm about to tell you about something that's coming up. It hasn't happened yet, but yeah, really, really pleased. I'm going to score the goal that gives me a hat trick, so yeah, delighted for the team.
Oh, remarkable. Well, talk us through the goal that you're going to score.
Yeah, love to talk you through it. So Barry and Gary kick off, and Gary is going to go back to Barry, who'll feed it through to Larry, and Larry will go on a run, and yeah, he'll play a blinder of a pass.
To you?
No, to Steve.
Oh, okay. I see.
Yeah, and Steve gives it just a little tap, and yeah, I'll get on the end of it and put it away for my 3rd. That's the hat trick, and yeah, really pleasing for something to come together after all the build-up.
Absolutely brilliant. Well, we'd better let you get back onto the pitch to score that goal, but before that, just to say well done, and of course you're the hat trick hero, you get the match ball, there we go.
Yeah, always nice to get the match ball, really pleased with the hat trick, onwards and upwards with all that's to come.
Thanks, Gary.
Yeah, it's Harry.
Sorry, Harry, thanks.
Yeah, pleasure.
To see how God will score the hat trick, who is the 3rd redeemer that he'll provide? Shirley's going to read to us from the New Testament now, and we'll find out.
The Gospel of Matthew, chapter 1, and I'm going to start reading at the very first verse. The genealogy of Jesus, the Messiah. This is the genealogy of Jesus, the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Abraham was the father of Isaac, Isaac the father of Jacob, Jacob, the father of Judah and his brothers. Judah, the father of Perez and Zerah, whose mother was Tamar. Perez, the father of Hezron. Hezron, the father of Ram. Ram, the father of Amminadab. Amminadab, the father of Nahshon. Nahshon, the father of Salmon. Salmon, the father of Boaz, whose mother was Rahab. Boaz, the father of Obed, whose mother was Ruth. Obed, the father of Jesse. And Jesse, the father of King David. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Now then, that was the beginning of Jesus' family tree, but did you spot the two redeemers that we've had so far? Boaz and Obed, and Ruth got a mention as well. They're all in Jesus' family tree. Jesus' family tree. Because of Boaz and Ruth and Obed, later on King David was born, and much further on down the line, King Jesus was born, the son of David, the Messiah or the Christ, the chosen one of God. Thinking about this is incredible. It means that when God was being kind to Naomi, he was also being kind to you and me, because he gave her just the Redeemer she needed, and through her family line, through Boaz and Obed and on down through the centuries, he gave us just the Redeemer that we need. And that Redeemer was Jesus. Now you might be thinking, yeah, but I'm not in the same situation as Naomi. I'm not stuck in a faraway country. I'm not worried because my land is going to be sold. I have enough food to live on. My life doesn't depend on whether I have a daughter-in-law who gets married. All of those things are different. I don't need redeeming from all of those problems. They were Naomi's problems. That's true. But you and I do need redeeming from something much worse. You see, you and I are experts at treating God badly, not believing his word and thinking that we're much better and cleverer than him. And the Bible calls that sin. And we're all experts in sinning against God. And that puts all of us in a really dangerous position. We face being cut off from our Creator God forever, not to know him in any way at all. And the way that the Bible describes that is terrible, but that is just what we deserve for treating God in that terrible way. But God, in his grace and mercy, sent us a wonderful Redeemer, someone who would pay the price for our sin so that we might get something amazing. Now, do you see those two verses on the bottom of your bookmark? They're on the screens as well at the moment. In the New Testament, we write that God has rescued us from the dominion of darkness and brought us into the kingdom of the Son he loves, in whom we have redemption, the forgiveness of sins. That Son is Jesus. Jesus gave his life, all he had, in order to redeem us from a fate even worse than the fate that Naomi was facing. God gave us Jesus, our Redeemer, because he loves us and because he always has been a God of grace and mercy, treating us as we don't deserve, not as we do. That is an amazing thing. So, if you take up your bookmark and open the final window now, if you haven't done so already, and you can fill in Jesus next to the picture of the cross. And what does he do? He gives us life and hope together. He is the third Redeemer. He makes the Redeemer hat-trick this morning. He is the one who redeems us. He is God's gift to us. God is just the same as he was in the days of Ruth and Naomi, completely in charge of history, kind and full of compassion. All we need to do today is to accept the gift of his Redeemer. And we will know that whatever happens to us in this life, our sin has been paid for in full. Now, Have you ever worn really uncomfortable shoes at any point? They were really heavy or scratchy or gave you blisters. I did once. I chose to wear a new pair of shoes on the day of my brother's wedding, which was a bad day to choose to break in a new pair of shoes. It wasn't very bright because I remember as that day wore on, they were really hurting. I remember sitting listening to the speeches thinking, I'm really glad I'm not standing up at the moment because my feet were hurting. But imagine that you're wearing shoes and every time you do or say or think something against God, your shoes get heavier or hurtier, if that's a word. They become more and more uncomfortable and difficult to wear and unpleasant to wear. What can you do? Well, do you remember in the book of Ruth, when Boaz agreed to be a redeemer, he took on a sandal. Someone gave him a sandal and he put the sandal on. It showed that he was willing to walk in the shoes of the Redeemer. Well, for us, along comes Jesus and he says, give your shoes to me, I'm willing to wear them. I'll take them off you, I'll take your place, I'll put them on. And he's made that clear to everyone. I am willing to pay the price, says Jesus, for him, for her, for you, for me. That is what it means to have Jesus as your Redeemer. He paid that price on the cross, but he's alive right now forever. So there'll never be a time when he isn't willing to be your Redeemer. He paid everything so that you and I might have the most important thing, a relationship with God in which all your sins and mine, past and present and future, have been paid for in full. Because Jesus has taken them all the things you've done, all the things you will do, he's dealt with them at the cross. That's grace, and it's wonderful. So, Jesus gives you and me life and hope because he is our Redeemer. Take your bookmark home at the end of the service today. Use it to remind yourself that God is the hat-trick hero of the book of Ruth. It's like he gets the match ball, he gets all the glory because he's provided three wonderful redeemers. The first two of those redeemers, Boaz and Obed, made it possible for the third Redeemer, Jesus, to be born and to do his wonderful work, which was for you and for me. Isn't that mind-blowing to think about? So use your bookmark this week to remind you of how amazingly kind and compassionate God is and what a wonderful Redeemer Jesus is. He's given you and me life and hope forever.